in listen-only mode.
Thank you for joining us today, and welcome to Selling Your Business, Learn How to Prepare, presented by Scott Bushkie, President of Cornerstone Business Services. My name is Ryan Kauff, and I will be your host today. I direct the Wisconsin Small Business Development Center at UW Green Bay. The Small Business Development Center, or SBDC, at UW Green Bay is part of a statewide network of SBDCs working with small business owners to facilitate growth and improvement and to launch successful new companies. Through no-cost business consulting, low-cost entrepreneurial education, and strategic facilitation, SBDC experts serve as resources for small and emerging mid-sized companies. The Wisconsin SBDC is hosted by the University of Wisconsin Extension and is funded in part through a cooperative agreement with the U.S. Small Business Administration. Our website is www.uwgb.edu/SBDC. Also joining me for tech support today and to take questions throughout the presentation and at the end of the presentation is Michael Wentworth from TMR Associates. In June, he presented the How to Improve Cold Calling Efficiency and Results webinar, which you can now find a recording of on YouTube as well as on our website. He will also be featured in a webinar in the first quarter of 2014. Our webinar today is the fifth of 7 in a series of monthly webinars we call our Secrets to Success series, designed to help small business owners increase their financial success. At the conclusion of this webinar, we will provide the upcoming webinar topics, and we encourage you to consider registering for those as well. I would like to thank our partner for the Secrets of Success webinar series, First Business, and I thank them for their continued dedication to small business success. During the webinar today, we invite you to ask questions at any time. Please use the menu at the right of your screen in the section indicated within the red circle. You may type your question there and press Enter to submit it. We will also take questions at the end of the webinar for a few minutes if there's time. And now, I am pleased to turn it over to our expert presenter this month, Scott Bushkie, President of Cornerstone Business Services. Scott?
Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you and the people on the call today. Just a little bit about Cornerstone very quickly until we jump into this. Cornerstone was started in 2001. I've been selling businesses for over 15 years. We've been part of over 300 different transactions. And what we're talking about today is learning how to prepare. And what we've seen is that it's never too early to start thinking about how you're going to transition out of your business and how to sell and starting to prepare. So that's what we really want to cover today as I bring up my slides here. So as far as Cornerstone, most of our clients are in the $1 to $50 million range. We can go much higher. Sometimes we go a little bit lower, but that's kind of our sweet spot is in the $1 to $50 million range from a value standpoint. And a lot of our clients are in the manufacturing, service, distribution industries. The majority of our clients are through the upper Midwest, but just sold a company out in New Jersey, and we've got a client in Wyoming and North Dakota right now. So we really do work on a nationwide basis and sometimes even on an international basis. So that's a little bit about Cornerstone, and I want to get into the agenda today. So the agenda is types of business transitions, types of potential buyers, the key drivers to real business value, and common pitfalls in selling your business. So we want to get into what are the different ways you can possibly transition your business, what are the difference between some of the buyers out there, some of the key drivers of really what truly enhances value. We've seen many buyers or sellers work very hard on certain aspects of their business, putting in a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, a lot of hours, only to find out that when they went to sell to a third party, that third party really didn't care about that portion, and they could have spent a lot more time either with their families or working on other areas of the business to really drive business growth. And then lastly, what are some of the common pitfalls that we see out there when people try to sell their businesses? Again, using my 15 years of experience in several hundred transactions, we've come up with usually the top 5 or 10 things that people do that can have a substantial, hurt the chance of substantially of you selling your business or definitely leaving some money on the table. And hopefully we can give you a few insights to those today, and will help you have a much better chance of selling your business in today's marketplace. So with that said, let's get into the different types of business transitions and types of transitions. The first one is transitioning to a family member, and I think this was maybe more common years ago than it is today, but it's still definitely a very viable option. And the pros to transitioning to a family member is obviously you get to put your son or daughter or relative, whatever it might be, into business and kind of keep that family legacy going on. You maintain the culture of the business and kind of how the business is being run. It provides an income stream for your family or for the individuals in your family getting into business. It allows you to keep some control, and there may be some tax advantages to doing that, as well as most times it's over a period of time versus a lump sum payment up front. Some of the cons to selling to a third party, is unfortunately, as business gets more and more competitive, we're seeing you just have to be that much more on your game, and sometimes the son or the daughter doesn't want to be in that industry, or they don't want to work as hard, or mom or dad, or their skill sets are much better served in, they want to work in more technology or more, cutting edge industries versus maybe some old, manufacturing or whatever it might be. According to the Boston-based Family Forum Institute, only 1/3 of businesses successfully pass from the first to the second generation, and going into the third is even more bleak, that only 13% actually make it to that third generation. So it's something that is just not as common, and unfortunately doesn't happen as often as it does. Some of the other cons is that a lot of times the son or the daughter want the family discount, where if you could bear $10 million on the open market, maybe they want to buy it for 6 or 7 because, hey, I'm your son or your daughter, why make me pay full value? The other thoughts is how do you keep the kids who aren't in the business, how do you keep that fair? Hey, if I gave Johnny the family business and they're making $1 million a year, how do you keep his sister or other brother happy who doesn't own the business, and how do they get their portion of the inheritance and things along that line? There could be some real issues. And lastly, is typically those are paid out of cash flows. So if you own the company and continue to run the business, you get those cash flows anyways, and then still could sell the company. But typically they're paid out of cash flow. So if the business doesn't do well due to the economy or or a new competitor or the son or daughter running into the ground, your retirement isn't going to be what you thought it was going to be. Moving on to the next is transitioning to an employee or a management team. And a lot of the same pros and cons as with family members. Maintain the culture. You're giving the opportunity for your employees that, worked hard for you and gave you a nice lifestyle to take control of their life and own a piece of a business. Keeping the name, thanking them for their hard work. Again, some of the cons are, and we're dealing with this right now in a transaction, that we've got a manager that we met with that wants to buy out his owner's business, and he said, why should I work any harder than I am? If I work harder and bring more sales in, all I'm doing is increasing the value, which makes me pay more money. So sometimes you don't get the years before full value out of your business because they might be sandbagging a little bit to keep the price a little bit lower, or they want a discount on the business because, again, they've worked for you and helped build the business over the years. And financing is somewhat difficult because they usually don't have a large, several millions of dollars set aside or whatever it might be, or even hundreds of thousands of dollars to buy the business and financing and things along that line. So again, a lot of times they'll want it to use the cash flows of the business over a period of years to finance the business. And the third is transitioning to a third party. Here, the pros are there's synergies that help with opportunities of success. Usually you're going to get the highest price and the most dollars. And many times there's growth opportunities for the employees of the company as the company grows, that they can get promoted, and there's opportunities that they might not otherwise would have had if the company would have stayed the same size or would have shrunk, just keeping it the same. On the cons, you might lose some control, more so if you kept your people in place. In some scenarios, there's some redundancies, and you might have some employees lose their jobs. Not very often, especially in that $1 to $50 million range of companies, but it does happen from time to time. Legacy, culture, or maybe the name changes. Maybe it's moved into the buyer's name after a year or two, and your name's not out there for decades to see. And the selling process might take a little bit longer to move through that process and be a little bit of a distraction. Moving into the types of buyers, you can see that I've got 1 through 9, and the ones at the bottom, those are basically your individuals, people looking to buy a business. Whether it's I'm just looking as an investor, if I find something great, it's got to have a manager in place and probably going to offer a fairly low value, to someone who's looking to really control their own destiny and not work for a company anymore and be able to grow their own business. But again, they can only use the cash flows that are in the business to pull out a salary, repay debt, and things like that. So again, they can offer up money, but it's usually not as high as the other groups potentially could be. The next groups, 4, 5, and 6, are more of that financial buyer, or a lot of private equity groups out there right now, and they usually pay a little bit more money and can afford to pay a little bit more money than the individual, but they're still not going to typically pay as much money as group 7, 8, and 9, just because 1 plus 1 doesn't equal 3 or 4. 1 plus 1 usually equals 2 or 2.5, if using that scenario, and they're still typically using the existing cash flow to finance the company and to grow, and that's how they're going to value the company, is only what the company's currently doing today, compared to 7, 8, 9. And I think 7 is an option with competing businesses, but it's also one of the most risky options. You might want to save that one for last if you go after them at all. But number 9, the company that is, where 1 plus 1 equals 3, 4, or 5, because you might be selling different types of products to the same customers. It might be a market share play where you're doing the same thing but in different states, and the company's looking to grow throughout the Midwest, and you do this, and you're the market leader in Wisconsin, and they'll pay top dollar to come in and have the instant market share in Wisconsin versus having to try to organically grow over time, and maybe it works, maybe it doesn't work. So when you're looking at selling your business, you really want to take a look at what the different buyer groups are that you're going to try to contact. And businesses that are usually under $1 million in value, you're probably looking at the groups 1, 2, and 3. Might get some companies looking to buy. If you can get your company over $5 million in sales and $1 million in EBITDA, you might get a chance to get into the private equity group range and getting some other buyers or some other companies interested. And then especially once you get over $10 million in revenue and $2 million in EBITDA is when it opens up to a whole nother group of buyers out there, especially in the private equity world, which is really can drive up some values. And that's what we're seeing in the marketplace right now, is that the sell side, especially larger deals over $5 million in value, there's definitely it's a seller's market out there, and there's more buyers with a lot of money in both the 4, 5, and 6 or the 5 category, along with the 7, 8, 9 category. That more buyers and sellers, a lot of money sitting on their balance sheets, and which drives up the values for our sellers currently. So what are some of the key drivers to real value? The first one, as much as this might hurt all of our egos as business owners, is you want to make this thing not about you. You want to really, when it comes time to sell, work yourself out of the business as much as you can, because I've seen so many times when I talk to a seller and say, well, how much are you in the business? Well, I do this and I do that, and I have all the relationships with all the customers, and they love me, and I'm just doing a great job, and business is growing. And that's great for running your business and driving cash flow. But when it comes time to sell, when they want to take you out of that equation, if you're a big part of that equation, it creates a lot more risk for that buyer. And if you can always think from a buyer's perspective, the more risk you have in a transaction, the lower value you're going to offer, or the more it's going to be performance-based with seller financing or earnouts over time instead of all cash at close and things along that line. So if you have all the relationships with the customers, especially the top customers, as many of our clients do at some level, start bringing a key employee along or someone else, to build up those relationships with another person. Start building a management team around you or key employees around you. If you're a small company under $1 million, have someone else close your retail location for you, so you don't have to be there from sun up to sundown. And just so people, you don't have to do it all, and other people start to take bits and pieces of what you do away. I can't tell you how much more a company's worth if they have a management team in place than if it's just an owner with a bunch of worker bees. Next one, is it scalable? Is it something that, people talk about, are you buying a job or are you buying a business? And neither one is wrong. Some of them are, buying a job is more that you can only do as much as you can possibly do. So once you work 24/7, you can't do anymore, and that's, you're kind of at the top of what that company can do. But if you can bring people in that you can train to do pieces of the business, or it's scalable, like it might be a $5 million company today, that in the foreseeable next 3 to 5 years, it could be a $20, $30, $40 million company. That's something that a buyer's going to pay a lot more money for or be more interested in compared to something that's limited to the amount of hours that one person can work in the business. What are your margins? If we've got two companies that are doing $10 million in sales, and one are running on margins at 5%, the other one are at 15%, obviously that 15% margin is much more sustainable for a company, and your cash flows will be much stronger, and people look for margins. Typically, a net income of 10% or more is looked upon very favorably. In different industries, always have different margins, but if you can understand what your margins are for your industry, at minimum, at least if you can show that you're at above average margins and what your industry is, that'll make your company more saleable and also possibly drive a higher value. Customer concentration. This is a big one. Call this kind of the Walmart effect, that you grow your business, and boy, I've grown from 5 million to 10 to 15 to 20 over the last 5 years, but your number one customer went from 15% of your business now to 75% of your business. And it doesn't make any, your cash flows are great, your sales are great, everything's great. The problem is when a buyer looks at it, one customer 75%, 50%, really anything over 15% starts to get them a little nervous. Definitely over 25%, you're probably going to see a structure that's different than what it would be if it wasn't at 25% or more. So anything that you can keep at least ideally under 15, but for sure under 25%, will show that you have a nice customer, a nice diverse customer base, and that company will be worth more. Otherwise, the companies are still saleable, but again, the value will most likely be less, and you'll probably have the buyer most likely will look for some kind of an earnout over a 1, 2, or 3 year period to say, as long as your number one customer at 60% of your business stays, I've got no problem paying you. But if they go away, then I'm not going to pay that earnout. And then you've got the whole argument that, well, if they did leave, was it because they just left and you shouldn't get paid, or because the buyer did something to make them, to let them go away or make them go away and neglected the client. So customer concentration is a big one that people might not think about, because cash flow is cash flow, and it is. But at the end of the day, customer concentration is one that really can raise the red flag for a lot of buyers and make either buyers walk away or just make it a lot less attractive from an offering standpoint. What are the growth trends of the business, or the TTM? TTM is the last trailing 12 months. So it used to be that we would put over the last 3 years a 50, 30, 20 weight on the business, and with all the uncertainty and all the things that have gone on over the last 5, 6, 7 years, what most buyers are looking at right now is they'll look back 3 years, sometimes 5, but what they really care about is what happened the last 12 months, because what happened the last 12 months is probably the best projection of what's going to happen the next 12 months. And that's especially when the private equity groups and companies are looking at businesses and there's that synergistic value. Like my client out in Wyoming right now, no one's talking about what they did 3 years ago. They're not even talking about what they did in 2012. They're just focused on what did they do in the last 12 months, what was last month's numbers. So when you go to, again, prepare to sell your business, you want to understand truly when are you going to sell that business and understand where that finish line is, and then really sprint to that finish line so you're finishing on an upward trend and not a downward trend, because you will definitely get A, more buyers to your business, B, a higher value, and C, probably more cash at close than you would if it was flat or going the other way. So this is something that, as a seller, to understand when you truly are going to sell your business. And right now, if people are looking to sell their business, it's really a very nice time, because if they can time, boy, we're having our record year with right now, especially for larger companies, over $5 million in value. The seller market is really peaking. You're really getting the best of both worlds, with the M&A market being very active, a seller's market, plus you're peaking in your industry. It kind of creates that perfect storm for the highest and best value for your company. And obviously, the M&A market peaks and then a bubble bursts, and we don't know when that next one will happen. But it definitely does affect the values, even if it doesn't affect your company's numbers at all. the value for your company will go down because of the market is not as active, or the buyers have, again, a little bit more uncertainty due to the market's dropping and will offer up less value. Management team and key employees. We talked about this a little bit. Whether you're a small company and key employees or a larger company and a management team, much more saleable, much more likely to get a higher value. If they talk about multiples, instead of getting a 4 multiple or a 3 multiple, you might get a 3.5. Instead of a 3, you might get a 3.5 or a 4. A half to a whole turn more in value because you have a good management team in place. Position in the marketplace. Are you a leader or are you not a leader? As far as you're just competing on price. And again, here are some different ideas of all the things that you can look at that come up with the overall value. It's just not what's on your balance sheet or on your P&L. Again, with this slide, it's just because someone tells you your business is worth, they do a certified valuation or we do our estimates of value, it's worth $5 million. At the end of the day, it's worth what someone is willing to pay for it, and that's where we don't put an asking price on and truly get out there to see what the market will bear, because you just never know what the motivation of those buyers are, or the seller. Someone who's healthy and ready to go and selling when they don't have to, compared to someone who's very sick and with a terminal illness. Everything being the same, the one with the terminal illness will probably sell for a much lesser value if they have to, versus the other one that doesn't have to sell. And that's the best time to sell is when you don't have to and things are on the upward swing. A couple of quick book recommendations. Everybody I think has heard of Michael Gerber's The E-Myth, but John Warlow, Built to Sell, is definitely a book that I've met John. It's a good book and just talks about really preparing your business and what buyers look for. Some common pitfalls real quick. The proud parent syndrome. This is what I call, if people are trying to value the business themselves, these businesses are more like giving up one of their kids for adoption than it is in selling a stock or something along that line. So, most people think that if the business is their kid, it's everybody's kid's the best looking, the smartest, and the best athlete in school, and they price it accordingly. And that's the number one reason that businesses don't sell, is that people typically price them out of the marketplace. Going to market not prepared, not putting a book together, not getting all the highlights of the company instead of just piecemealing things. It will definitely, or being a reactive to a certain trigger will definitely lessen the value and almost always leave money on the table. Limited buyer reach. If you're not going out to the right buyer universe, we can go out, nationally, local, regionally, nationally, or internationally. If you only go to a small group, again, there's a good chance you're going to leave money on the table or have a lesser chance of selling your business. Doing it yourself. I look at anything, and if you're doing something for the first time in your life, and probably the only time you're going to do it in your life, and taking in all the emotions that you have in your business, do you really think you're the best person to do that job? To bring in a specialist that sold businesses before and can help be that coach or that guide to guide you all the way through and make it a lot more of a simple process and have a much better chance of selling that business. Using advisors that are specialists. Again, going back to like an accountant or attorney, making sure that attorney will say actually does M&A deals. There's thousands of attorneys out there, and just in Green Bay, there's probably, I can count on one hand at the most 2 that are attorneys that really specialize in selling companies, even though there's hundreds of very good, very smart attorneys in the Green Bay area. Asking price. Depending on the size, you either do or do not want to put an asking price on the business. Again, depending on the size and who your buyer is. Only working with one buyer. Many times we say at Cornerstone, one buyer is no buyer. So, for instance, in 2013, we've averaged 3 written letter of intent or indication of interest, so 3 buyers that are sincere, putting offers in place on each of our clients, so they can really pick and choose and really understand what is the true value of the business, not just how much can I get from this one buyer and get only the most out of that one buyer, but not sure what the marketplace will bear. Giving out 2 information. We see this a lot where people will talk to a competitor and say, well, now I want to bring you in, Cornerstone. I've had a meeting or 2 with the buyer. Well, what did you give them? Well, we gave them all of our financials, our margins, and sometimes even our some of our customers. And the old adage, if you get the milk for free, why buy the cow? You might get just too much information, and they'll just take the competitive intelligence, use it unfairly against you, and not even consider buying the company. Timing of the sale and reason for sale, which we'll get into in a second here. So what impacts value? People typically want to only sell their company when they turn to a certain age, And there's a few things that they don't take into effect. I'm just going to go through them real quick before questions. The economy, they don't take into effect. The political environment, the uncertainty, which we're talking about right now, world economy, the M&A marketplace. We have a saying that the rising tide lifts all boats. Industry dynamics, financing, lending climate, interest rates. The more I've got to pay in interest rates, the less I can pay in principal as a buyer, and the less I can offer on your company, even though everything else is the same. Same thing with financing. Money's really cheap right now, and it's becoming more and more available. When it's not available, I'm going to offer less because I want to get a certain return on my investment buying your company. The number of buyers you bring to the table. Again, right now on the larger deals, there's more buyers than there are sellers. On the very small sub $500 deals, there's more. I think there's more sellers out there than there are buyers right now, so it's a little bit more of a buyer's market. The size of the business, as we've talked about. How is the business doing? What are the trends? Do I have my management team in place? Well, what's my customer concentration? Margins, et cetera, et cetera. So what's the trigger that causes most business owners to sell their business? Again, it's typically I'm at a certain age and now I want to sell my business. Well, what if that age was January 1st, 2009, when nothing was going on in the marketplace? Now you've got to stay in for 3 or 4 more years. So by sitting down and really planning and understanding what all those other things that we just talked about briefly, they all come into effect, and you want to try to time as many of those right as possible, and also using the right advisors. Some of these things are the financial planner. The ideal world would be if you sat down with your financial planner or financial advisor and found out, here's the assets I have, here's the liabilities I have, here's how much, and here's the ideal lifestyle, and find out what the gap is. And then you meet with the M&A advisor and let them understand what is the value of my company in today's marketplace. Because just because you got a valuation 2 years ago, even though maybe your business didn't change, the M&A marketplace changed and might be better or worse overall, and then your industry also has changed. So understanding what the value of your business is in today's marketplace, and then meeting with the M&A account to say, okay, if it's worth $10 million, what am I going to net out of this business? And as long as you can net out more than what the gap is, why would you want to wait and sell in your business? Otherwise, you're rolling the dice and waiting for the next bubble to burst, and you might want to sell. We hear a lot, I'll sell just next year, just 1 more year, because they emotionally can't let go. And then also, the bubble burst in 2008, 9, and now they're into the business for 3 to 5 more years after they were ready to get out and burnt out, and usually the value goes down substantially, not to mention the quality of life for that individual. So in summary, preparation is definitely key, and if you prepare right and you use the right advisors and in the right process, you'll be able to maximize the value, minimize your risk, minimize taxes, and go out on your terms, not someone else's. So with that, I will open it up to any questions.
All right. Well, well done, Scott. Let's shift back to the screen here. And we've got a number of questions that have come in. Let's begin with this one. How do you know which buyer is best for you? And I think what they're getting at is, how do I know whether I should try to sell to my employees or should go looking for a third party or what?
I think at the end of the day, it's what's important to you. You've got to understand, knowing the pros and cons. Is it all about, getting the top dollar, or getting money? If hey, I don't need the money, I'm well off. I can sell it to my employees over time, and if they never pay me a dime, it's not going to change my lifestyle. And I think also looking at the size of the company, and who the ultimate buyer is going to be. If you're a sub-$1 million company, there's a lot of great companies out there, very saleable companies, but you're probably looking more at another individual to come in and be able to buy that company to control their own destiny versus having a $100 million company come in and want to buy that company unless there's something very unique to that business, because it just won't move the needle enough. So that's where you really want to understand, where you can save yourself a lot of time, is just understanding who the most likely buyer is, and then what's important to you, because there's pros and cons with each type of buyer.
Great response. Another question: how do I know if there are third parties looking or strategic buyers interested in my type of business?
That's where I would work with contact an M&A advisor. Meet with some, figure out ones, get references from them, and really find one that you trust, because that's what they do day in and day out is continually monitor the marketplaces, the different industries, and really understand what's going on in the marketplace, and then they can help you, and that company can do the research to find out just what's going on out in that marketplace and give you some really timely and accurate advice versus you trying to go out there and do a lot of work when most people don't know what they don't know, and they can spend a lot of time, a lot of money out there with very little chance of success.
Got it. Now, there's another question here. Someone says, this looks like a lot of work. Who does this work?
It is a lot of work, but the good news for business owners that, if you work with the right M&A specialist, is that, at Cornerstone, we have a written process, and we do a lot of this work and take a lot off your shoulders. Between you and your accountant, you'll have to get us, the information of the last 3 years, financials and balance sheets, some customer concentrations and things along that line. But, for instance, what we do to help with that is a lot of people will say, fill out this 50-page questionnaire, in all your spare time, which we found most entrepreneurs don't have spare time, and they don't, they can tell the story, but they can't write it very well. So what we do is we have a copywriter who would sit down and interview our clients or that business owner and help put together the book. And all they've got to do at the end of the day is really review it to make sure that we accurately captured their story and all the highlights. And at the same time, the M&A advisor would do all the research of, who are the best fits? Are there individuals? In our database, we've been around for 13 years. We've got over 3,000 to 4,000 individuals, private equity firms, and companies that have contacted us, signed confidentiality agreements. We know a little bit of information about them, of what they're looking for, and are in our proprietary database. So that's one of the advantages of working with a specialist versus just going to, some people work with their accountant to try to sell their business, and they don't do it full time. In fact, they don't do it really part time. They're just trying to help them out. But sometimes by helping them out, they can actually hurt them because they don't know what to put together. They don't know, what's going on in the marketplace, and sometimes they'll have a much lesser chance of getting that company sold. But you want to see, do they have a written process or not, and ask the, what's going to be my time commitments, and they should have a pretty good answer for you.
Well, we got time for one more question here, Scott, and that is, and this may be a little bit tough for you to answer, but common to many businesses. Help me understand, the person saying, help me understand what's important to the buyer. In other words, when they look at my business, what are they looking at?
Yeah, the number one thing I would say is cash is king. You can have all the sales in the world, but if you're losing money, unless I'm a strategic buyer for some unique reasons, why would I want to buy your company? So the biggest thing you can do is show as much money on the bottom line as possible. I know there's different tax strategies that people like to use, especially for small businesses, but those last 3 years, show as much money to the bottom line as possible. And then some of those other things that we talked about, try to build a little bit of a management team around your key employees. Get those customer concentration down to under 15% ideally, or 25 at worst case scenario, and really understanding what's going on in your marketplace. But if you can do just a couple of those key things, and really again sprinting to that finish line, you will really have not only a much better chance of selling your company, but dramatically increase the value versus just staying steady, or where a lot of business owners, the time that they sell is when they're burnt out and it's not fun anymore. And then they watch, sales and profits drop off the last 2 years, a year or two by 15, 20, 25, 30%, and that will have a dramatic negative effect on what that overall value will be.
All right, Scott. Well, listen, thank you very much. Ryan, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Scott. Really great information, very valuable to business owners. Our next webinar will feature Bill Foch of Open Book Coaching in Increased Profitability and Growth with Open Book Management. We will also introduce our 2014 webinars lineup next month. Then in December, we will feature Mary Rayberg of Envision Financial Services in Financial and Regulatory Hotspots for 2014. You can register for these webinars on our website. And with that, I'd like to thank Scott Bushkie of Cornerstone Business Services, First Business, and Michael Wentworth of TMR Associates. And thank you all for attending. Shortly, you will receive in your email inbox a recording link to this webinar. Please share it. Enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye.